right, hello, welcome back to Unqualified Analysis. I am your host, Caleb. You can follow me on the Twitters at CalebVUA. That is down in the description. And just go ahead, subscribe, share it with a couple of friends. Help me grow this damn thing a little bit, please, and thank you. With that said, we are back for a Week 8 recap in college football episode of Unqualified Analysis. I'm hoping that made sense. I'm sure it did. I digress on that front, though. Either way, we got a loaded week up ahead of us here. Once again, the number one team in the nation goes down. We have a new number one. Your boy is sitting at 1-5 right now. Bad weekend. I mean, the board was just brutal on Saturday. I mean, my God, your boy was down bad. We have lost some ground in the all-out offensive against the board. We're consolidating our gains, and we're gearing up for another push this coming week. We'll see how it works out, man. We'll see how it works out. Let's get back to being hot. Let's get back to being hot. But for right now, 1-5 heading to Monday Night Football. You already know whether I'm 1-6 or 2-5. It's bad right now, folks. It's bad. We just got to get through this week, get into next week, reload, and get back on the trail to success here. Either way, though, Week 8, college football, let's just get into it, man. We got a couple, big games to talk about here, so we'll just start with the most prominent game of the weekend. Number 5, Georgia, goes on the road to number 1, Texas. They're, I believe, ended up a 3-point dog by the end of this whole thing. Maybe it was like closer to 5. I think that line did ultimately move in Texas's favor. Let me tell you, folks, that is not how this thing worked out at all. Georgia dominated this thing from the jump, jumped out to a 23-0 lead at halftime, scored 16 in the second quarter to really blow this game open. Ewers got benched in the first half. Arch Manning comes in. He's also not that good. So Ewers comes back in, finishes it out. Easy for me to say. Scores 15 in the second quarter, or the third quarter, starts making it a game a little bit, one possession game. Worth noting that in the greatest precedent set of all time, the officials initially called back a Texas interception because of a pass interference, and then Texas fans started throwing stuff on the field. There's a bit of a delay. They come back from the delay. They're like, hey guys, you know that pass interference? Hey, our bad. We didn't mean to throw that flag. That's an interception, and then Texas scores a touchdown off of that. So, interesting situation there. Not a great precedent to set. Worth noting it was the right call, but it seems a little bit, besides the point in this matter. That's a horrible precedent to set. Just not good at all. We'll get back to that in a second, though. I mean, Georgia ultimately holds Texas scoreless in the fourth quarter. They get another touchdown to make it a more comfortable win. 30-15, the final score. Georgia is all the way back. At a certain point, I guess they found out that Trevor Etienne was on the team, and he just started going bananas in this one. I mean, the second quarter, third quarter, well, not really the third quarter, but I mean, in the second quarter, the dude went bananas, ended up with 3 touchdowns on the game, a little over 4 yards per carry. He had a good game in this one. Carson Beck didn't look fantastic, but hey, Georgia ended up dominating. Georgia looked like the Georgia defense that we've come to know over the last several years. It looks like they're kind of gearing up for a bit more of a push down the stretch. But the last, number 1 undefeated team ultimately loses. I believe this is the third time that the number 1 team has lost this season. We are quickly trending towards interesting territory that we've not been close to since like 2007. So get excited for that. I know I certainly am. Things are getting crazy right now, folks. And I mean, Texas, they showed some real weaknesses in this one. You get dominated in the first half. Obviously, Quinn Ewers not being a threat with the legs did not help him in this one. Georgia was teeing off on him in that first quarter, first half before he got benched. Ultimately, kind of pulled together an okay enough performance in the second half, but really just too little, too late. I think that's the biggest thing you can take away. I mean, for Texas's defense, maybe they're not quite the physical force that we expected them to be. I mean, there are Georgia comparisons coming out all throughout this past week, and hey, they went up against the real thing, and they did not look like their counterpart on Saturday night. And I mean, Texas is going to be fine. They're almost a shoo-in for a playoff spot unless things get completely out of control and fall apart down the stretch of this season. I just don't really expect that to happen. Even a second loss, maybe it puts them in the 8 to 11 range. Either way, I think only one bid is going to get stolen this year. That's probably the G5 contender there. Maybe the Big 12 steals one. I don't see Texas dropping out of the playoff. If they're on the borderline, they're getting in. We all know how the playoff committee does things around here. So there's no real worries about that. They're going to be in the playoff. I think they're mostly fine, but you saw some weaknesses that you hadn't seen throughout the course of this season so far, and it's worth noting as well, Texas really hadn't played anyone before Georgia. They played Oklahoma, dominated them last week, but Oklahoma, as we saw, just get leveled by, I forget, South Carolina they were playing? Yeah, it was South Carolina, just got absolutely demolished, steamrolled and ground into the earth, into a fine powder this past week against South Carolina. So, I mean, that win doesn't look great anymore. Tennessee's having a little bit of that same issue, but they got themselves a good one this past weekend. There's the main storyline here is that there's no team in the nation that has a squeaky clean record and is a flawless great team. Contrary to what I may have thought to start the year, which I should probably stop making those sorts of predictions, there's really not a great team this year. I mean, even Oregon sitting now at number 1, I'm not sure anyone has the utmost confidence in them. They've looked, spotty at times. They got a big win against Ohio State, but they're going to have to keep proving that going forward, and we'll see if they can make it through the Big Ten unscathed. They got a big one coming up with Penn State, if I'm not mistaken there. So we're going to see. We're going to find out. I mean, if Oregon can run the table, I would be shocked, though. I feel like we're not going to have an unblemished team that's not coming from the group of 5 ranked going into this playoff season. That being said, I think we found out a lot about both of these teams. I think we found out that Texas has some holes when it comes to competing for a national title, specifically looking at defending the run. That was obviously an issue in this game. Mobility of the quarterback, Quinn Ewers, the mobility of Quinn Ewers, obviously got to be a concern at this point, and that's not really something you can change. But I mean, the Texas defense, they are talented. I trust Steve Sarkisian at this point as a head coach. I think he has acquitted himself well enough to where we don't have to bring up the transgressions of his past anymore. I think he has firmly beaten those. I mean, they're not allegations, but he's firmly beaten those reputations that preceded him, I guess is the best way to put it. So I think they're going to figure it out. They're still going to be a playoff team. No need to worry about Texas. Georgia, maybe they're rounding into form. If they can play like that the rest of the season, I'm not sure there's a loss left on their schedule. And there's no walk into an SEC title, but they're certainly going to be there at the very end if they play like they did on Saturday throughout the rest of the season. That's really the best performance that we've seen from them this year. Certainly the best one since week 1 that we have seen from Georgia. So maybe they're rounded into form here. Again, they're not in a whole lot of danger of missing the playoff. I mean, if they win out, they're in by default. If they drop one more game, they're still probably in because they got that big old G logo with the red outlining on it. So yeah, no worries about either of these teams. I think we found out a good bit about both of them along the way, though. Okay, so the other big game and the one with big takeaways coming from it is Alabama going on the road to Tennessee. And unlike Georgia, they did not fare nearly as well as their counterpart across the way. They lose to Tennessee 24-17. Tennessee, I mean, the defense is spectacular. That's the main thing that we could take away from this. Holding an Alabama team with all that offensive talent to 17 points is a credit to how good this defense is. Jalen Milroe, there's fair question marks coming up about how good he is right now, if he can take this team to a national title. At this point, Alabama is going to have to win out to go to the playoff. Make no mistake about it, that's the situation that they're in right now after dropping their second game this year. I'm just not sure that they can do it. I mean, I got to look at their schedule here real quick. But, I mean, they got Missouri this next week, which they should win. Missouri has looked, I mean, Alabama's not looked great this year, but Missouri has looked outright hapless over the last couple weeks here. So they got them coming up next week, still stubbornly ranked, the Missouri Tigers. I feel like Alabama takes care of business there. But then you go on the road to an LSU team that's ranked number 8 right now. If LSU keeps on winning, no reason to think that they won't be climbing up the rankings here. And it's probably the toughest environment in all of college football. It is hostile to say the least. I've never even been to Baton Rouge for a big game before. But just the shitty games that I've been to, I mean, even Mississippi State coming in there, that's kind of the biggest game that I went to whenever I was, in and around that area in college, had buddies going to that college. It was hostile. Absolutely hostile. I mean, you pack 100-some thousand drunk Louisiana people in there. It's just a good time, essentially. Not good times for the people that are visiting. And Alabama, this year's Alabama team, I mean, there's just not a whole lot to indicate that Nick Saban really has a whole lot of a footprint on this team at this point. The defense has just been getting pushed around. I think they hired a good staff. I think the people that they brought in to coordinate the defense should be doing a better job than they are. The players aren't playing well. Obviously, they're getting gashed basically every week at this point. It's a weekly occurrence. Teams that shouldn't be putting up points against. I mean, Vanderbilt scored 40 on this defense this year. I'm just not sure how good Alabama is going to be. I think they get a loss at LSU, and I think there's a real chance that final week of the year, Auburn in the Iron Bowl, they are at home versus Auburn, which is, advantageous for them to say the least. But they lose that game against Auburn. I feel like there's a real chance that they do that. Their only saving grace is that Hugh Freeze is probably a worse coach than Kalen DeBoer. And Kalen DeBoer has not been great this year. If they lose that game, though, there's a real chance we're talking about Kalen DeBoer hot seat year one, like right out of the gates. I mean, already this week, I am sure the sound clips on the Paul Feinbaum show have just been electric from the faithful over there in Tuscaloosa. It's only going to get more hostile the more that he loses, and I can definitely see at least one loss left on the schedule, maybe 2. If things don't fall their way against Missouri, maybe it's even 3. And if we're talking 7-5, Kalen DeBoer is going to be in a tough situation, and it's going to really test the patience of the administration over there with Tuscaloosa, Alabama. I don't know why I said Tuscaloosa there. It's going to take some real patience from the administration there not to fire him after year one if that happens. And that's just the worst case doomsday scenario. Don't get me wrong. They're still a very talented team. And if they can pull this together down the stretch, they can still make the playoff. They're going to have to win every single game left, but they can still make the playoff at the end of this whole thing. So there's nothing to be worried about. Hell, even a third loss at this point, if things keep going as chaotic as they have been going so far this year, even with a third loss, they still might be able to sneak in there in the back portion of the playoff rankings there when it's all said and done. So they're not out of it by any stretch of the imagination, but they're going to have to win going forward. They're going to have to win. They cannot sustain one more loss left on this schedule. Getting back to Tennessee, though, I'm not sure that... Let me just put it this way. I think Tennessee at this point, they're 6-1. Obviously, if they keep winning like this, they're going to go to the playoff. It's just a question to me of, can you win a national championship without your quarterback playing up to standard? Because, they have a great defense. Best defense that Josh Heupel has had there by far. There's no question about that. They have a great running back. Dylan Sampson has quietly just been lighting defenses on fire this year. He had another 2 touchdowns in this game, had 3 touchdowns the week before. And let me just look at his yearly statistics. He has 17 touchdowns already, running for 5.8 a carry. He's been a monster this year. He's been really the straw that has stirred the drink offensively for Tennessee this season. Is this an era where you can still win going ground and pound and playing behind your defense? It would obviously be a new way to win for Josh Heupel, and it would cement him easily as a top 5 coach in the entire country if he's able to even get a deep run in the playoff without Nico playing well. But is this an era where you can do that? I'm just not entirely sure. The defense has got to be great, like all-time great in order to win a national championship that way at this point in time. And I'm just not sure that the defense is at that level. They're going to have to keep proving it to me. And they're going to have a real opportunity to do it against Georgia, I would say, coming up here. I'm not totally sold that they're that good. They're a very, very good defense. I think, again, best defense that Josh Heupel has had. Are they an all-time great defense that can carry you to a national championship? That's my real question, and I don't think we have an answer to that. I mean, playing against an Alabama team where Jalen Milroe is inconsistent at best, not the biggest thing to prove in the world. I mean, it's not just Jalen Milroe. The only one that really scares you to death on that offense is Ryan Williams, and that used to not be the case. It is now. So I'm just not sure that you can't crown the Tennessee defense yet. Obviously, this is very impressive and proves that they are a really, really good defense. We're going to find out here going forward whether they are a great defense. They do play Georgia, Mississippi State. That's not going to be the crowning moment, but if they can hold Mississippi State like under 20 points, I'd be very impressed by that. I'd be very, very impressed if they can hold Mississippi State down because that offense is coming into form. I mean, Michael Van Buren is playing very, very good football. The president, he's got a nickname, the president. That's just all time. Love to see it. Love to see it. You do avoid LSU, and you do have Vanderbilt at the last week of the year, which is sneaky. I mean, Vanderbilt's a ranked team right now. They came in at 25. Shout out to the Commodores. Doing great this season. Absolutely great. I'm not sure how long you're keeping Clark Lee, but let's not dwell on that right now. Moral of the story, though, is, I mean, they played Georgia in the third to last week of the year. Outside of that, though, they should win every other game left on their schedule. The Georgia game is going to be tough, but very winnable at the end of the day. I mean, if you can stymie the Georgia offense and make it a rock fight, anything can happen in that sort of game. And I think Tennessee has the ability to do that, especially against an underperforming Georgia offense this year. I would just like to say once again before we move on, watch out, Alabama. Watch out, Kalen DeBoer. You better win every game left, otherwise it's going to get uncomfortable. It is going to get uncomfortable, Kalen DeBoer. Okay, so let's just kind of go back and take this thing chronologically now. We're going to kind of breeze through a couple games here. Oregon, welcome to the Big Ten. You went on the road to Purdue and you took care of business, 35-0. Never gave them an ounce of hope. Everyone who was betting Purdue plus 24.5 or whatever it was, you look foolish. I didn't take the bait. I kind of wanted to because it would have been funny, but you don't take bets because they would have been funny. Wouldn't have made much of a difference. I still lost pretty much every college football bet I placed outside of like one. But that's besides the point. I was smart for not taking this one. Oregon, way to not avoid the trap right there. Dan Lanning is continuing to climb up the rankings nationally of coaches in my mind. With what he's been able to do with the team this year, showing like incredible brains the previous week versus Ohio State, intentionally putting the 12 men out there. And I mean, the rules committee is looking at that as we speak. They're making a rule change probably because of that loophole. So that's how you know you're playing 4D chess because if you find a loophole that the rules committee didn't even think of, you are thinking way far in advance of everyone. That's just a high football IQ from Dan Lanning. I'm just continually impressed by him. I think he's going to win a national championship at some point. Is he going to win multiple? No one can say that, quite frankly. I mean, there's no way to tell that this far in advance, and a lot of that has a luck component to it as well. I just feel confident that at some point Dan Lanning is going to win a national championship. And once again, it's Purdue. They're a terrible football team. They are worst team in the Big Ten, one of the worst teams in the Power Five, but they have a reputation that could have maybe caught you off guard if you weren't, going into this thing prepared. You came into it prepared, you took care of business. Only scored 35, so it probably could have, stepped on their necks a little bit more, but you didn't give up any. And that's all you got to do. You just take care of business. They're 7-0. They're the new number one team in the nation after Texas lost this past week. So, hey, good for them. BYU stays undefeated as well. They they won a crazy game this past weekend against Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State had them on the ropes with like a minute 20 left, I think it was. I mean, they drove, just a painstaking drive. Took up like the entirety of the fourth quarter, it felt like. They score a touchdown to go ahead late, and you think BYU, they have some time, but not a whole lot. What happens? BYU, Jake Retzlaff, the Jewish quarterback who is the starting quarterback for the school named after the founding father of the Mormon religion. Hilarious, will never stop being hilarious. He was not great in this game, but he led them down the field when they really needed a drive and got them a touchdown. BYU gets the win at the buzzer, 38-35, electric. And this is what you can expect from the Big 12 all season, folks. All damn season. I'm telling you, I wouldn't lie to y'all. The Big 12 is the most entertaining conference in college football. Not the best. They're the clear third among the conferences here, but it's a balanced conference with no great teams, but a lot of solid teams that are very much in the mix of this thing. And especially with Utah falling off this year, it's anyone's game right now, and BYU is grasping their opportunity with both hands. And we'll see if they let go. They've got a favorable schedule coming up here. So, hey, they've already gotten through the meat of it, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just take a look at it real quick and make sure. Down the stretch, at UCF, at Utah, that second back-to-back road game, especially in the Holy War, that might be a trouble spot for Utah there in November 9th. Also, don't look past UCF, man. They stink. Don't get me wrong. They are a bad football team, one of the worst in the Big 12 right now. But that's the type of game that Gus Malzahn wins right there. Just look back historically at everything he's done at Auburn, even at times at UCF. When his back is against the wall, when his team is not expected to win whatsoever, every once in a while, he'll just pull one straight out of his keister and get a win. So you cannot look past UCF. Looking forward to that Holy War after the bye week there. So that's a trouble spot. Utah is certainly a trouble spot. But then you get to Kansas. They're not nearly as good as we thought they would be. You're at Arizona State. Arizona State is solid, but I do think that's a win. And then you play Houston. So there's a real chance that BYU runs the table in the Big 12, ends up undefeated to end off the regular season. And who would have thought this year that BYU would be playing for a playoff spot, and not in all likelihood, but having the opportunity to play for a playoff spot. That's just what the Big 12 is this year, man. You always knew that one of these teams was just going to come out of the pack out of nowhere. Who would have thought it would be BYU? Not me, but that's what makes college football so great, folks. Miami at Louisville. This was a wild game. It was back and forth the entire time. Both quarterbacks put up big numbers. Cam Ward had his 7th straight 300-yard passing game to start the year. I don't think any Miami quarterback has ever done that. Ultimately, Miami gets the win 52-45. There was some more chicanery with the officials that ultimately got them to win. I just don't understand how the ACC just keeps doing this so blatantly. I don't get it. I truly don't get it, but here we are once again. And frankly, I'm not even entirely sure what the fuckery was, if we're being honest. Come on, we're in the circle of trust here, and I'm trying here, but ultimately they get another win. Miami looks super bad, essentially. Not really super bad. That was unfortunate. That was just not accurate of me. Okay, so they don't look great. That's the main thing. This is the third straight week where they've just not been impressive whatsoever. They are going through it right now. The defense is like Swiss cheese, the way that teams are able to score on them. Louisville, the offense, in theory, is supposed to be good. They've not been scoring like this most of the year, though. I have faith in Jeff Brom. This is kind of a down year for him a little bit. But at the end of the day, 45 points getting hung on you by the Louisville Cardinals, especially when you, in theory, have a more talented defense than they do in offense. you got to be worried. And this is, again, third straight week where you're giving up big points to teams that should not be scoring as much as they ultimately scored. You've got to be concerned if you're a Miami fan right now. And seemingly they got gifted another win by the officials in this one. Crazy how that's happened for like literally 3 straight weeks at this point, but it is what it is. I don't know. Is Miami going to be tested throughout the course of the rest of this year? I mean, they're 7-0 right now. I think if Clemson played them today, Clemson would run them off the field, quite frankly. They've been just killing teams ever since that week 1 debacling against Georgia. Granted, they haven't really played anyone as of yet, but they're just dominating in a way that Miami has not. But Miami coming up here, you got Florida State, that's a win. Duke, that's probably a win. At Georgia Tech, that's really the one trouble spot throughout the course of the rest of the schedule. But then you got Wake Forest, you're at Syracuse. Might be another trouble spot, but I think they probably take care of business in that one. Ultimately, I think they probably run the table and finish undefeated, unscathed. So I did misspeak earlier. There might be undefeated, top 5 level team at the end of this thing. I don't know, man. I can see a couple potholes there where they could possibly, fumble the bag here a little bit. I mean, if Cam Ward keeps playing the way that he's playing, though, I have a hard time seeing them lose to any of those teams left on the schedule. They're going to face Clemson at some point, though. Or, I mean, maybe they luck out and they face Pittsburgh and they don't really get tested. I feel like they are going to face Clemson at some point, though, and when they do, I think they are in for a rude awakening. I just don't know if this team is built to win defensively this year. Obviously, offensively, you got no questions whatsoever, but teams keep scoring on this defense in a way that would be concerning to me if I were a Miami fan. Okay, LSU take care of business against Arkansas. This was a possible trouble spot for them. It feels like LSU's just getting better week after week. They're all the way up to number 8. This past week's results did not dissuade that notion. They're still at 8. I mean, that USC loss still feels inexplicable. There's a lot of week 1 losses that just feel inexplicable in all levels of the sport. That's just kind of the way it is, I guess. But yeah, LSU gets the win 34-10. They keep taking care of business. They are still undefeated in the SEC. Them and Texas A&M, we'll talk about that in a little bit. You already know what happened. They played Mississippi State, whatever. UCF goes on the road to Iowa State, and hey, Gus Malzahn almost had one of those moments, man. Iowa State had to grasp victory and yank it out of the jaws of defeat in this one, but ultimately they do get the win. They do stay undefeated, 38-35. Another thrilling fourth quarter. I think actually same score as that crazy BYU Oklahoma State game. That's a popular one there in the Big 12. This was another crazy one, and Rocco Becht did not look good in this one. Rufus Harvey had himself an absolute day, 196 yards and 2 tuds on the ground. But ultimately, when you needed a bucket late, Rocco got you a bucket. And hey, he ran for the touchdown that ultimately put them in the lead and put this game away. Iowa State, they've looked up and down this year, but that defense is generally big time. They got a bunch of points scored on them by UCF, but they're generally a big time unit. The offense seemingly is coming into form a little bit more as we go on. I think we still haven't seen the peak of what they can be. Rocco Becht is just kind of having a little bit of a down year, frankly. But hey, a lot of season left. We got 5 games left here in the regular season schedule, and let's take a look at what Iowa State's got coming up down the pipe here. They do play Texas Tech this coming week. I like them in that one, but there's no guarantee on that one. Then they're at Kansas. That'll probably be a win. Cincinnati, probably a win. Utah, I think they're honestly good to dominate that one, quite frankly. Kansas State that last week. I think that's obviously the sneakiest spot for them. They get them at home. That's the main thing. Weird things happen in that rivalry game. You may remember last year, that was a shootout matchup in a absolute torrential blizzard. I think it was 45-42 the final score. Crazy game last year between Iowa State and Kansas State. So that's probably the biggest stumbling block there. I think Iowa State has a real chance to run the table too. If we can get an undefeated matchup there in the Big 12 title game between Iowa State and BYU, are you kidding me? Are you absolutely kidding me? That would be just beautiful, beautiful football when this whole thing is said and done. So I hope we see it. I certainly hope we see it. But 2 undefeated teams in the Big 12, I tend to think that it's a little bit far-fetched. So feels like there's going to be a stumble in there somewhere along the way for one of our front runners there in that conference. Okay, Clemson, once again, they dominated against Virginia, 48-31. Virginia scored a little bit more than you would have expected. This is one of our losses. We bet Clemson minus 21, and they didn't get that. Just brutal. Right on the borderline, but it is what it is. Hey, Virginia, maybe you're a little bit more improved than you were last year. Hey, coaching staff, hats off to you. You're doing a good job, I suppose. But Clemson just wins their 6th straight. Cade Klubnik, once again, 300 yards, 3 touchdowns. Phil Maffa with 2 touchdowns. Clemson is just churning and getting better and better each week. Hey, man, I might have to eat my words if they keep playing like this. Now, we'll see if they ultimately face someone that gives them some fits this year. They do face Pitt down the stretch. They face Louisville this next week. You're at Virginia Tech in a hostile environment. You finish off the year against South Carolina. So there's some possible stumbling blocks here. But make no mistake, they are better than every single team that I just mentioned there. There's a real chance that we get an undefeated matchup in the ACC as well. And again, that seemed, well, not an undefeated team. There would be 11-1 after the regular season. But hey, man, Clemson, who would have thought after that week 1 debacling that they could come back and do what they've done? I think I might have alluded to it, but I'm not sure if I really believed it. But hey, good for them for bouncing back. Dabo Swinney's still a really good coach. Hey, imagine how good he would be if he used the transfer portal, but I digress on that front. Number 12, Notre Dame took care of business against Georgia Tech there, 31-13 the final score. Really feels like Notre Dame has found its identity, and they're going to be leaning on that big time as the year goes on. They got a big matchup against Navy of all teams this next week. They play both Army and Navy. Those are schedule or strength of schedule boosters that they did not expect coming into the season. I'll tell you that right now. So that'll be interesting to watch, but we're still in the in-between portion until they play someone worth a damn, which won't have to wait much longer on that one, so we'll put a pin in it. Texas A&M, hey, they go on the road to those scrappy Bulldogs, and Mississippi State, they got my hopes up in this one. I thought there was a chance that they would win this game here in the second half. I mean, it was 24-17 at halftime, then 10 unanswered in the third quarter, so it's a little bit of a shady situation there. But hey, you come back in the fourth quarter a little bit, you get a little bit of hope. I'm just grasping at straws here, man. My team is 1-6. Texas A&M got the win 34-24. I'll tell you what, though, moral victories. That's what we're here for. We didn't get embarrassed. And Michael Van Buren threw for another 3 touchdowns in this game. He wasn't efficient by any stretch of the imagination, but he hit some big-time plays to Kevin Coleman. Mario Craver caught a couple, too, down the field. The offense is rounded into shape. The defense is getting some turnovers that you really like to see. I mean, hell, Connor Wigman didn't even really have a big day in this one. I mean, he did get 8.7 yards per attempt, but 2 interceptions in this game. Now, the Mississippi State defense does stink, but they got one really, really good player in Isaac Smith. And they've been forcing turnovers very well here of late. So you love to see that. And, I mean, Michael Van Buren, like I said, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, only that 1 turnover. He played downright good football in this game. Kevin Coleman, man, he is so good. He is an explosive play waiting to happen. There's just a lot of very explosive receivers. And I'll tell you what, of the true freshmen that came in, the highly touted true freshman, Mario Craver's showing me the most right now. He's going to be a stud. True freshman, making major contributions. Now, he came in with a couple other 4-star receivers this year that we expected to contribute more in year 1. He's the only one to actually do it. He's the one that's kind of slotted in there at that 3rd receiver, distinguished himself as an explosive playmaker. I'm so excited to see what this offense is going to be going forward, because the core is all true freshmen, true sophomores. The offense is just so damn young this year. I'm much more optimistic than I have been in the past during this season about Mississippi State. But let's not gloss over Texas A&M, man. They're number one in the SEC right now. They're 4-0 in the conference. They've won 6 straight after that week 1 loss to Notre Dame. And that win is aging like fine wine for Notre Dame. I'll tell you what, man. Texas A&M just keeps on winning. They just continue to look very impressive. They're here in year 1 under Mike Elko. I think the team has an identity where it really didn't over the past several years under Jimbo Fisher. There's a clear run the football, play defense sort of identity. Just play, efficient quarterback play, nothing too crazy that you just didn't have before Mike Elko got there. I think they definitely hired their right guy. I don't know if Mark Stoops would have been a better hire. We'll never know, quite frankly. But ultimately, it got chaotic, but I think they ended up on the right guy in Mike Elko. I really love what he's doing there at Texas A&M, and I think if he keeps trending like this, watch out, man. Texas A&M could be a real contender going forward. Make no mistake about it. This is year 1 under Mike Elko. The more he gets his guys in there, the more I think we're all going to be very impressed with what Texas A&M becomes. But hey, still, good optimism from Mississippi State, man. 1-6, but we're showing flashes. That is all I can ask for. That is simply all I can ask for at this point. But we move on. Indiana. Whew! My goodness. They host Nebraska this past weekend. They score 56 on that Nebraska defense that was supposed to be one of the better defenses in the country. Dominated Colorado early this year. Does not work when you're playing against the Fighting Indiana Hoosiers with Curtis Rourke. My goodness, Curtis Rourke. He didn't throw for a whole lot of yards in this one. Ultimately went out with an injury, so you hope he's okay there. But 9 yards per attempt, 17 of 21. Got a touchdown through the air. Didn't get one on the ground, but we don't need him to get one on the ground. Ultimately, 5 touchdowns on the ground, though, for Indiana. Justice Ellison, their leading rusher, had 11.7 yards per attempt and 2 touchdowns. They just dominated Nebraska. Absolutely dominated in a way that I certainly didn't expect. I was very much leaning towards Nebraska in this game, which should tell you just how off I was as a gambler this week. Man, Indiana, they are really shaping up as a possible playoff team, man. I mean, if they can go through the rest of this schedule, basically what it comes down to is they have to win pretty much every game outside of the Ohio State game. So they got Washington coming up in this coming week. Then they're at Michigan State. They play Michigan. Then they're at Ohio State. That's the one. You get a mulligan there. I think if they keep trending like this, they might be a hell of a fight there. But if you don't win that game, no harm, no foul. You end off the season versus Purdue. If you take care of business in all of those other games outside of Ohio State, Indiana's a playoff team, folks. I mean, absolutely. Signed, sealed, delivered. They are no question in my mind that Indiana is a playoff team if they finish this season 11-1. And every team I mentioned outside of Ohio State, I think they are better than. And the main thing here, though, it especially is that, they do play Michigan on the road. They play Ohio State on the road, Michigan State on the road, excuse me. So that's kind of hostile environment. They're better than Michigan State, though. They get Michigan at home. They're already better than Michigan, and they get that advantage of playing at home. Then you host Purdue, kind of a soft landing spot at the end of the year. Don't let yourself get let down in that spot. I'll give you that advice right now. But every one of those teams outside of Ohio State, they should win against. They'll be favored against all of those teams except for Ohio State, if I had to imagine. So Indiana, Curt Cignetti, we'll see how long he stays at Indiana. He's kind of on the older side. He's 63, I want to say. So maybe he stays at Indiana. Hey, maybe he stays there for the long haul and makes Indiana into something while he's there. I don't know how long they're going to keep him, though, man. I don't know how long they're going to keep him. He is quickly establishing himself as one of the very best head coaches in all of college football. A meteoric rise, the likes of which we've not seen in quite some time from the head coaching position. I am fascinated to see where Curt Cignetti ends up. He's done things in Indiana that I simply did not think possible this offseason. I am fascinated with his rise in the ranks of college football. Indiana, man. There's a lot of surprises this year. This is a fun, chaotic year. You love to see it. You just love to see it. Okay, so Nebraska on the other side. Look, you're still a year away. I mean, 5-2. You're much better than you were last year. So just keep on winning. I think you're probably going to take an L this week versus Ohio State. It is what it is there. You're just not on their level just yet. But you got the 5-star true freshman in there at quarterback. You know, having some growing pains now. You still got 2 more years with him if you don't have everything fall apart. And Matt Rule is a program builder. You can make the argument that, it doesn't take 3 years to build a program anymore. I mean, you can throw some Band-Aids on it and you can get lucky in the transfer portal. That's all fine and good. You can go crazy in year 1 like Indiana has. But at the end of the day, there is still something to be said about a slow burn build of a college football program, and there's no one better at doing it right now than Matt Rule. I have no question in my mind. There's still going to be a very good team in year 3 under Matt Rule. Just this year, not quite there. You know, you're a bit of a year ahead of schedule. Just get to a solid bowl game. You know, maybe you flirt with a playoff spot down the stretch if you keep winning, but I think those hopes ends this coming week against Ohio State. Kansas State goes on the road to West Virginia. They take care of business 45-18. Neil Brown, well, he cooled off his seat for a little bit, but he's right back on that hot seat. We got West Virginia fans, sliding into Jimbo Fisher's DMs like, "Hey there, big head, what you doing tonight?" Vibes are not great in Morgantown right now. But hey, Kansas State after that BYU loss, still 6-1 this year, very much in the thick of things in the Big 12. So they're very much a team to watch. Auburn is an embarrassment. They went on the road to Missouri. For all intents and purposes, should have won this game, but Missouri ends up getting the win 21-17. They're still, I have no idea how they're 6-1. They just keep winning games, playing the most disgusting football you've ever seen. It's just bad vibes for Missouri. Somehow the vibes are even worse for Auburn right now. They're 2-5. They are right down there in the suck with Mississippi State. If only those two storied programs could play against each other this season, that would be the most unwatchable game of all time. But Mississippi State would probably win that at this point, because at the very least we've got an offense. So just saying. Missouri, man. I feel like they're going to get humbled again against Alabama. I'm not sure how good Alabama is, frankly, but I think they're better than Missouri. I think they're probably going to end up humbling them this coming week. But, hey, watch your seat there. Watch your seat there, Hugh Freeze. You might not be very comfortable for very long. SMU gets a big win over Stanford, 40-10. Stanford stinks. SMU, Rhett Lashley, shout out to him, though. Playing pretty well this year. Illinois beats Michigan 21-7. We saw this one coming for sure. It's the only one that we really called correctly in the college football ranks. I said it whenever I briefly previewed this game. Illinois is just a better version of what Michigan wants to be. More efficient quarterback play, better defense, I would say, for Illinois, and we saw it in this one. Just absolutely dominated Michigan in this game. Just a terrible, terrible game to watch. It was Bielema ball to the classic degree. Michigan just stinks this year. They're just not very good. Maybe they go 6-6 this year. Hell, maybe they put a run together and go 8-4. At the very least, I think they're going to catch a big-time L against Ohio State. And make no mistake about it, if Ryan Day loses to Michigan this year, he is going to be out of a job. It does not matter if that is the only loss on the schedule, I think. I think he's going to be out of a job if he loses to Michigan this year. They should beat them handily. That's all I'm going to say. They should beat them handily this coming season. I don't know where Michigan goes after this. I'm still not sold on the coaching staff. I've never really been sold on Sharon Moore as a head coach. He hasn't shown me anything to dissuade that notion. It's a conservative to the max offense without a whole lot of upside and not very good quarterback play. There's just no explosive element. You give your defense no help. The defense is way less talented than it was a year before. Michigan is just a middle-of-the-pack team. The fact that they were still ranked this last week, boggles my mind. They shouldn't have been ranked last week. They're not ranked anymore. Michigan, just not good. Just not good, and I don't think we're going to be talking about them a whole lot much more throughout the course of this season going forward. Hey, on to the military academy portion of this episode. We got 2 ranked military academies here, Army and Navy. Both of them ran their respective opponents this week out of the building. Army won 45-28 over East Carolina. Navy won 51-17 over Charlotte. I mean, let's just for funsies, let's look at the rushing stats for these teams, shall we? So, hey, honestly, less rushing yards than I thought, quite frankly. But still, 295 yards on the ground for Army on 56 carries, 5.3 yards per carry, 5, count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 touchdowns, all of them by the Scarlet Knights, I believe. No, it's not Scarlet Knights. I don't know. By the starting quarterback for Army, Bryson Daly. He had 171 yards on the ground and 5 touchdowns. Oh, by the way, also threw for a 6th touchdown. I didn't know Service Academy quarterbacks could or were allowed to throw a pass. He only threw 10 in this game. However, he went 7 of 10, 147 yards, 1 touchdown, no interception. He can throw the goddamn pigskin. I've never seen an Army quarterback that can really throw, and really a Service Academy quarterback that could throw like really both of the quarterbacks for Army and Navy can. So Army is good, very much a contender for the Group of 5 playoff spot right now. They're going to get a big chance to prove themselves against Notre Dame. And by the way, so is their Service Academy counterpart, Navy. They, again, win 51-17. And just for funsies, let's take a look at the rushing stats. Hey, a little bit less in this game. You know what? Give them some grace. Just give them some grace. They still ran for 171 yards, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Blake Horvath, the Navy quarterback, way less efficient than his counterpart at Army, Bryson Daly. Still threw for 3 touchdowns. There was only 3 touchdowns, so he didn't get the 6 that the Army quarterback did. But still 3 touchdowns in this game, throwing the ball. Navy is a very good team as well. Honestly, I feel like Army is probably a little bit better. I think their quarterback is a little bit better. But Navy is still really, really good this year, and nothing to punctuate just how chaotic this season has been than both the Service Academies, or 2 Service Academies, being really, really good football teams. I hope that both of them upset Notre Dame, because that would just be chef's kiss. Beautiful. Beautiful. You would love to see it. Okay, so with that said, let's kind of go around the Power 4 here, take a look at some of the matchups we didn't look at. Boston College has fallen off pretty hard. They lose to Virginia Tech on the road 42-21. I have no opinions on that game. I think the ACC outside of like the top 3 teams is essentially irrelevant in my mind, so I'm just going to leave that there. Florida State's now 1-6, and I would say pretty confidently that they are a worse team than Mississippi State right now, which is saying a lot considering how talented that roster is. Mike Norvell, you better start winning a couple games here. You maybe got yourself a year of leeway. Do you have 1-11 leeway? Because right now it is looking rough. Duke, on the other hand, they win 23-16. They're 6-1. Does anyone think they're actually good? God, no. Good Lord, no. But in the ACC, you're going to get some 6-1 teams that are not awesome. And just think about how bad Florida State is. If they're like the bottom of the barrel in the ACC, which is by far the worst Power 4 conference. Tough times. Tough times right now if you're a Florida State fan, and I'm not sure where you go from here. Mike Norvell better, I think we kind of discounted that. I'm going to dwell on this for a couple more seconds. I think we kind of discounted the fact that Jordan Travis was there for so many years that he came in, I believe, with Willie Taggart. So he was there. He predates Mike Norvell. So Mike Norvell never really brought in a quarterback that was his own guy. It was just always Jordan Travis. And I feel like people just forgot, me included, kind of forgot that he never had much of a succession plan, or his evaluations were off every time. And I think we're starting to see that a little bit this year. I think people also forget that he had Paxton Lynch, and that was good enough in the group of 5, but he was one of the worst first-round picks that we've ever seen in the NFL draft. Maybe Mike Norvell just doesn't develop quarterbacks. And hey, that's a heavy accusation there. And I warmly welcome him to prove me wrong. But I just don't... I don't know if Mike Norvell's long for that job, and we'll see if Deion Sanders ultimately is the guy that they go after. That's a lot of baggage that comes with him, and you're also not entirely sure how good he is without maybe the 2 best players in the upcoming draft, his son and his weird surrogate son in Travis Hunter. We'll see how good he is there. I just feel like this Florida State job might be up for grabs here soon, so that's one to keep an eye on there. What else did we miss? Wake Forest beat UConn. Shout out to Wake Forest, 23-20. Hey, UConn, 4-3. Much better than I think anyone thought they would be, quite frankly. NC State actually beat Cal outright. They were like a double-digit dog going into this game. Existence is pain. Life is suffering. You can switch those around in any order you would like. But this was a tough one. This was a tough one. We were pretty wrong. Pretty wrong. That's all I got to say on that. That's the fucking ACC. Jesus Christ. Got me in a bad mood now. Okay, Big 12. What's going on there? Arizona State lost to Cincinnati. Thank God I didn't bet on that game. Cincinnati, 5-2 this year. Hey, maybe Scott Satterfield's got some things going on. Maybe we'll revisit them as we go down the stretch this year. They're very much in the thick of things, like most teams in the Big 12 right now. Kansas beat the hell out of Houston, which should tell you just how bad Houston is. Kansas is not nearly as bad as they once were as a program, but they're pretty bad. Houston is, they're sad right now. Willie Fritz has his work cut out for him in year 1. I can't help, maybe I'm a little bit biased from my experiences in Mississippi State, but I can't help but thinking that having Kevin Barbay as your offensive coordinator doesn't help. Just simply doesn't help. And we'll see if Willie Fritz realizes that. Colorado, they keep on winning. Shedeur Sanders had a big game. They went against Arizona, who's maybe the most disappointing team in college football this year outside of Florida State. They win the 34-7 against Arizona. And, I mean, you would never know that Noah Fafita and Tatario McMillan are on this Arizona team. It's just baffling. It's baffling how bad that offense is this year. The defense has never gotten better. They've stayed the same unit the entire year. So with the exception of like a crazy week 1 performance for Arizona, I think they might have just whiffed on the hire with Brent Brennan, quite frankly, because, I mean, Brent Brennan kept around most of the guys that he that were like the coveted players that I'm sure Jed Fish tried to bring along with him going to Washington. Maybe you wonder if a guy like Noah Fafita might hop in the portal after this year and reunite with Jed Fish for this upcoming, I guess it would probably be his junior year at that point. So he's not even eligible for the draft. He's still got some time left. So maybe you see him exit the program. Arizona, this is just what happens. Mississippi State lived this reality last year in very different circumstances, but still, same sort of philosophy. You had a solid coach in there. He's gone for whatever reason it happens to be. Why is it doing that? Why is it doing that? Go away. But you lose a good head coach, you whiff on a hire in the next one, and it can tank your program. Hey, man, ask Mississippi State what can happen when you hire the wrong guy after a really solid head coach. It can fall apart just like that, and it's hard to build up after it's fallen apart like that. So I feel for you, Arizona fans. Your athletic department is stone cold broke, and your football team is bad, and there's just not a whole lot to look forward to. At least you have a really fun school to go to, and there's no shortage of booze and beautiful women out there. So have fun. You know, that's pretty much all you can do. I don't think you're going to be having a whole lot of fun at the football game. So, hey, Good for you. More time for partying. Okay, Baylor beat Texas Tech. They hung 59 on Texas Tech, actually. Crazy numbers here. 59-35, they beat Texas Tech. That's the first Big 12 win for Baylor. That's a classic Big 12 win right there. And it was the first Big 12 loss for Texas Tech, though. So they're still very much in the thick of things. They're just not very good. That's pretty much it. That's pretty much all I had to say about that one. TCU goes on the road to Utah. Cam Rising is out for the year now. If you didn't hear, he's eligible for an 8th season. He needs to go get a headset and start coaching. That's what he needs to do. He needs to go the JT Daniels route and just start calling some plays at some point here. Get your fast track to offensive coordinator. If you're anything like a Colin Klein, you're gonna be an offensive coordinator by the time you're like 30. So might as well just give that a spin, I suppose. Yeah, Utah without him though. Isaac Wilson stinks. The Utah defense is still good, but they play just the most unwatchable brand of football you can imagine. TCU gets the win 13-7. They now have the same record as Utah, and Utah just stinks. It stinks that Cam Rising couldn't stay healthy, because I feel like this could have been a really solid team if he was able to stay in there. It's just, I don't know if you can ever count on Cam Rising being healthy again. Unfortunately, it's just the nature of the beast. His body is just quitting on him, and you hate to see it. I'm sure he's going to be a good coach, though. He'll land on his feet. Big Ten, anything going on there that's not a ranked matchup this past week? Wisconsin keeps on winning. They beat Northwestern 23-3. Still haven't looked fantastic. Their running back there, though, Walker. I think it's Tawee Walker. Tawee Walker. Weird name. Good running back, though. He gets 126 yards on the ground, 5.5 yards per carry. Braden Locke accounts for he accounts for 1 touchdown. Some guy named Cade Yacamelli, got a rushing touchdown. Good for him, I suppose. Braden Locke hasn't played great, but the defense is playing better, and I think they're kind of getting back to what Wisconsin football is. Maybe we're getting away from the vertical air raid experiment for Wisconsin, and we're just kind of getting back to reality of you're not going to get a whole lot of guys from Florida to go up to Wisconsin, and you're not really going to do a whole lot with that strategy, quite frankly. And hey, maybe Luke Fickell is finally realizing that. I think he had to adjust the strategy if he was going to keep that job. Wisconsin, 5-2, 3-1 in the Big Ten. They're still, rounding into shape here. Year 2 under Luke Fickell, looking a lot better than year 1 so far. They get another dominant win, and they're just going to keep on chugging along. UCLA, kind of an embarrassing loss for Rutgers. UCLA, who would have thought coming into this year that UCLA would get their first Big Ten win before USC? Well, not true. USC already got their first Big Ten win. I'm stupid. Big time dunce. Me, dunce. Stupid. So USC is 1-4, but we'll talk about them in just a second. UCLA gets their first Big Ten win, though, on the road at Rutgers. Hostile road environment. Ethan Garbers went off in this one, 32 of 38, 383 yards, 4 touchdowns. I'm not sure he's ever going to have a performance that good again in his entire life. So, hey, enjoy that while you can. UCLA is 2-5. I haven't tuned into a UCLA press conference recently. Has Deshaun Foster figured out how to talk in front of a microphone yet? I don't really know. But yeah, UCLA, they're 2-5. Rutgers is 4-3, but they've lost 3 straight, I believe. They're not very good. Let's just get on to another 4-3 team, and I'm not talking about USC. No. I'm talking about the Maryland Terrapins, my friends. Maryland gets the win over USC 29-28. USC blew a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter. Maryland gets the win in this one. Man, I think Lincoln Riley is going to get fired after this season, man. I don't think USC is going to be patient with him. And at this point, why would you be? He's been there for 3 seasons at this point. This is the 3rd year. Yes, you just lost Caleb Williams, but look at that. Miller Moss was just sitting right there the whole time. You should be much better than you are, and I get it. The defense is still rebuilding. They're much more talented than they were. They made a great hire in Danton Lynn as the defensive coordinator. This team is just not good, and it should be better, quite frankly. I don't know who USC goes and gets. Hey, maybe that's a spot for Curt Cignetti if things keep going the way that they are. But, man, I just don't think Lincoln Riley is the guy going forward. I think that's the main thing. Maryland, shout out Mike Loxley and the boys for getting a win. I don't think we learned a whole lot about Maryland. I think we were just, exacerbating the disappointment for USC. I think Lincoln Riley is kind of checking out as we speak, and it feels like they're heading towards a parting of ways this coming year. Lincoln Riley, just go be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. I think you'd be a very good offensive coordinator in the NFL. I'm just not sure the college football head coaching ranks are cut out for you at this point, or you're cut out for it. You know what I'm saying. Michigan State beat Iowa 32-20. Yeah, I bet on Iowa in this one, and that just hurt. That just hurt a lot. Michigan State, 4-3. They're a winning team right now. Aiden Childs looked pretty good in this game. Maybe Jonathan Smith is rounding things into form a little bit. That, I guess, a team to keep your eye on. They're not very good, but, year one under a new head coaching staff, they were a terrible team the last couple of seasons. See what happens. Let's just see what happens. I believe in Jonathan Smith when it's all said and done. So, that's the Big Ten. What do we got left? Just the SEC? That's right, just the SEC. Any matchups we did not get to? Ah, yes. South Carolina. They go on the road to Oklahoma and beat the piss out of them. I mean, they did some horrible, unspeakable things to Oklahoma in this game. Jumped out to a 21-0 lead. Led this game 32-3 at half. And this over from there. There was just nothing left in the tank for Oklahoma. The offense is terrible. They fired offensive coordinator Seth Luttrell this past week after this performance. Big time whiff on the offensive coordinator hire for Brent Venables. They went back to Jackson Arnold in this game. He still didn't look good. Michael Hawkins, who was starting, obviously didn't look good. Otherwise, he would have been playing the whole game. Oklahoma is just a mess right now. And this is the flip side of that risk coin when you're talking about extending Brent Venables before the year. They didn't have to do it. They were being proactive about it. They would have looked like geniuses if Brent Venables came out this year and had a 10-win, 11-win season. Well, you're at 4-3 right now. The offense looks terrible, and you just signed the guy to a 5-year extension before this year, so that's a big-time buyout. Not that money is much of an object to these donors, but seems like Brent Venables is not long for that job either. And hey, there's some big-time jobs that might be coming open here soon. There always seems to be one or two. Interestingly enough, Oklahoma and USC might be on the same page of maybe having hired the wrong people in that spot. Hey, maybe you can do a little coach swap, though. At this point, I don't think the people of Oklahoma want to see Lincoln Riley back there. But hey, South Carolina, shout out to him. You got a true freshman starting quarterback in Lenore Sellers. You get a big time win here. You're 4-3. Hey man, just building some momentum, building up this program. It feels like somehow, some way, South Carolina is always going to be like a 7-5 football team. Even if you expect more from them or if you expect less, 7-5 just feels like South Carolina under Shane Beamer. I'm just not sure what to make of him as a coach. He's gotten some really solid players, but hasn't quite brought it all together. And it's hard to do that at a program like South Carolina unless you're an all-time great coach like Steve Spurrier. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like he's going to be there for quite some time. I feel like we're just going to look up and Shane Beamer's going to have been at this job with South Carolina for like a decade. And it's probably sneaking up on me as we speak right now. Never know what to make of South Carolina, quite frankly. I know what to make of Vanderbilt. They're 5-2. They're an absolutely solid football team so far this year. Now, Ball State did cover the spread against them. They kept it to a relatively mucked up game. But hey, Diego Pavia and the boys are winning over there. They're 5-2, 24-14, whatever. They get a win. They're 25 ranked. Ranked number 25, as they say in English, coming into this next week. Love to see the Commodores taking care of business. Could you imagine if they beat Tennessee in the last week of the year? The absolute pandemonium that would ensue. I mean, they took down the goalposts against Alabama. I would expect a similar scene if they pulled off an upset against Tennessee to end this year. Now that's pipe dreams right there. But we can dream. We can dream. Let's just hope for the maximum amount of chaos for the rest of the season, huh? Deal? All right. Don't look now though. Florida is. I mean, they're reeling off some wins here. They beat Kentucky pretty soundly, 48-20. Excuse me. DJ Lagway didn't look good. But when your running back goes for 22 carries, 106 yards, and 5 touchdowns like Jaden Ball did in this game, doesn't necessarily matter that your quarterback didn't really have an efficient game. Now, to be fair, they were just having him chuck the ball deep seemingly every time he threw the ball. 7 of 14, but 259 yards. That's a whopping 18.5 yards per attempt. And the thing was, there wasn't just like a one play, like 70 yards down the field. Their longest pass play was 58 yards. Elijah Badger ended up with, get this, 3 receptions, 148 yards, no touchdowns. That's beautiful right there. That's beautiful. Really weird stat lines from the passing game. All you need to know, though, is that Jaden Ball had 5 touchdowns on the ground. He is a stud. What year is Jaden Ball, I wonder? Freshman. That's what I thought. Hey, man, maybe Billy Napier's doing a little bit okay this year. We'll see. We'll see. Now, they are about to enter the absolute hellscape of their schedule right now because they are about to play Georgia at home, Texas on the road, LSU at home, Ole Miss at home. Then, hey, at the very least, Florida State turned out to be not a very good team. But that is, let's count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 straight ranked opponents. Good luck. Just good luck. You maybe have like 1 or 2 wins left on the schedule if you're Florida. Yeah, it's about to get ugly if you're a Florida fan. That's all I got to say about that. Gird your loins. It's not going to be pretty. Okay, what are we doing on time right now? What are we doing? I mean, hour 7, reasonable. That's downright reasonable. Let's take a look ahead to next week, and then we'll get you into the break here, and then we'll be back on Thursday. But let's look at what we got going on right here. So first and foremost, we're just going chronologically here. We got Pittsburgh hosting Syracuse. Pittsburgh -6 in this game. Big time over-under at a 61.5. There might be some points scored in this game, especially with both of these offenses. I guess I would probably lean in the favor of Syracuse and that over at 61.5. I feel like it's going to be a fun game. Then we got a big one on Friday night. This is, I mean, the fact that this is on CBS Sports Network, someone needs to be taken out back and shot. Not actually, but this is egregious to put Boise State at UNLV on CBS Sports Network. The over-under is 65.5. I could give a damn, man. I am taking that over. I'm gonna go bet that the second that we get off of this podcast. That over would have to be like 75 for me not to bet it. This is going to be a fun matchup here. If you got no plans on Friday night, just like your boy, stay up late, watch this game. Kickoff is at 10:30 on CBS Sports Network. Find a way to watch it. This is going to be must-watch television. Boise State is favored, -2.5. I'm staying away from the line on that one. I'm just betting the over, and I'm ready to have a good time. I think this is going to be a classic late spot matchup between Boise State and UNLV. And it's going to have some serious ramifications for the possible Group of 5 bid in this upcoming playoff. So that's going to be a big one to watch. Stay up, watch it, drink caffeine. It's going to be great. Nebraska is at Ohio State. Ohio State is laying 25.5. And maybe I would bet Nebraska just on the merit of possibly making this into a rock fight. I don't know, man. I feel like there's a real chance if Nebraska got run out of the building by Indiana, Ohio State might do the same after coming off of their first loss of the season against Oregon. They've been stewing on that loss for the entire bye week. I think there's a real chance that they hang like 50 on Nebraska this week, have an offensive explosion that we haven't seen from them this year. So I don't think it's looking good for Nebraska right now. I'm probably staying away from that one. Notre Dame is at Navy. Notre Dame favored by 12.5. This feels like such a trap. The books want us to take that 12.5 so bad. And I might do it. I just don't know if I'm ballsy enough to do it on this show. Navy just hasn't played anyone. I think of the Service Academy undefeated teams, I think they're the worst team right now. I don't know. I'm staying away from that one. I'm very tempted to take Navy in the points on that, but I just got to stay away. I just feel like the real play here is going to be the under at 52.5. Both these teams want to run the piss out of the ball and play defense. So 52.5 on that. If there is a bet to be made, I think it's going to be the under at that 52.5. And I think the only way they really hit that over is if Notre Dame comes out here and just lights Navy's defense on fire and blows them out of the water. I think that's pretty much the only way that they hit that over. I don't see a shootout in this game. I'll just say that. I think it's going to be a low-scoring defensive contest. Washington is at Indiana. Indiana is a 6.5-point favorite. I'm scared at how much I like Indiana in this game at that minus 6.5. This feels like a trap. This really feels like a trap to me. I don't know, man. I'll get back to you on that. I'll get back to you on that 6.5. We'll put a pin in that. I love Indiana at that spot, though. I'll just say that. Ole Miss is hosting Oklahoma. Ole Miss is favored by 21.5. I'm staying the hell away from any game that Oklahoma's in, and I'm certainly not trusting Ole Miss in this spot either. So I don't know. Ole Miss has got some stuff to prove to me after their last two stumbles here of the last couple of weeks. That is one to monitor. Illinois is on the road at Oregon. Oregon is favored by 25 in this game. I don't think that's unreasonable, but I guess I would lean Illinois. I'm not going to take them because I think Oregon's just a very, very good team right now. But I would definitely lean them at the plus 25. And then I would probably lean, no real lean on the over, 54.5. Whatever. BYU is on the road at UCF, and told y'all. They're only favored by 2 points. Vegas knows the same thing that I do. This is a sneaky spot for BYU in this game. Careful. That's all I got to say. Just be careful in this game. I don't really have a lean in that one. I could very easily see UCF pulling out the win in this game. So there you have it there. I'll probably lean the over at 55.5 if you're going to put me in a corner. Alabama's all the way down at 15. I think that's well deserved. They're favored by 13.5 though at home versus Missouri. I would still lean Bama. I just think they're a much better football team than Missouri. The fact that Missouri's gotten 6 wins so far this year befuddles me because they should not be 6-1 at this point. I think there's going to be a major regression into the mean as they get into the meat of this SEC schedule. I just don't see them continuing to win for much longer, and I think the skid starts now with Alabama. You saw the cracks already against Texas A&M, blowing them out of the water. I think we're about to see it again versus Alabama this week. Texas is at Vandy. Texas is an 18.5-point favorite. Tough spot for Vandy to catch Texas. This is a ranked matchup, by the way, between Texas and Vanderbilt. If you would have told me that going into the season, I would have thought you were insane. I think Texas is going to have a bounce-back performance. I definitely lean them to cover that 18.5. And might be a sneaky bet spot for me here. I just feel very confident that Texas is going to take care of business here versus Vanderbilt. I don't think this is going to be a letdown spot for them. I think this is a get-right game in this spot. Hey, a resume builder where you would not have expected it before, so good for them there. I think they're going to take care of business. Miami is a 21-point favorite against Florida State. And hey, man, if it was anyone else, I would probably not bet for Miami, but I'm tempted to take that 21 versus Florida State. They're just so bad. They're so awful, and Cam Ward is so good. I feel like this one could get ugly. I think it could get very ugly when it's all said and done. So yeah, lean Miami in that one. Penn State's on the road at Wisconsin. And hey, this is a credit to Wisconsin. They're coming around. Penn State's only a 6.5-point favorite. And hey, Camp Randall, you can't underestimate it. And I think this is probably the biggest test that Penn State has faced so far this year. I would sneaky lean to Wisconsin. I'm probably staying away from this game, but sneaky lean to Wisconsin in this game. LSU, number 8 on the road at still number 14, Texas A&M. Texas A&M is actually favored by 2.5, and I would lean Texas A&M. I think Texas A&M is a really solid football team. They got a chance to continue to move up this SEC leaderboard here. They're already number 1, but they could really cement themselves at the top if they get a win here against LSU. Big time game for both of these teams because, hey, LSU could be the tops in the SEC when this whole thing is said and done if they get a win here as well. So, man, it's going to be fun. I think this is going to be a really good matchup. I would lean Texas A&M to improve to 7-1 in year 1 under Mike Elko. I just like them a little bit better than LSU. I think the defense is better, and I think the offense is good enough in especially the running game to take advantage of LSU's weaknesses. I like Texas A&M in this game. That's where I'm leaning. Kansas State is a 10-point favorite against Kansas. I would lean Kansas State in that one, but keep proving it to me. That's all I got to say. Keep proving it to me. Avery Johnson is starting to play better, but come on. You got some things to prove here. SMU is an 11.5-point favorite against Duke, and that should tell you just about everything you need to know about how the line makers feel about Duke. An 11.5-point home dog against the number 22 ranked team in the whole country in SMU. Conference game, people forget. I would still lean SMU. I just don't think Duke is all that good. I think they just play in a really terrible conference, and they haven't played anyone yet. So they ended up 6-1. Yeah, that's kind of my read on that game. That is it for the top 25 matchups, though. Let's do a quick jaunt around the conferences. Louisville's at Boston College this week. Georgia Tech is at Virginia Tech. North Carolina's at Virginia. Jesus, just a plethora of unranked matchups here in the ACC. Wake Forest at Stanford. Oregon State at California. And then that's pretty much it for the ACC. What do we got going on in the Big 12? I'm sure there's some underrated matchup over there. Oklahoma State against Baylor. Shield your eyes. Baylor is favored by 6.5. I would lean Baylor too. I mean, Oklahoma State sucks. Texas Tech is at TCU. TCU favored by 7, actually. I would definitely lean Texas Tech on that one. I don't know. I mean, maybe they're seeing something I'm not. I mean, I guess it's just that blowout loss for Texas Tech last week against Baylor. I would definitely lean Texas Tech in that one, though. I think they could very easily actually win this one outright. West Virginia is at Arizona. Hey, this is a back against the wall sort of spot for Neil Brown. For that reason, I would lean Neil Brown in West Virginia in this one to get the win. I'm not betting that, though. Noah Fafita is 9 touchdowns, 10 interceptions this year, though. That's just about as disappointing as you could possibly be if you're Arizona. Just they whiffed on that Brent Brennan hire. I'll tell you what. Fun name, just bad hire. Utah is at Houston. Utah is favored by 3, and this is really the only spot that I would ever think about betting on Utah because Houston is just so god-awful this year. I mean, there's a real chance that Utah shuts them out, quite frankly. They're just so bad. Even at 36.5, I would very heavily lean the under in this game, and that might be the real play, is the under at 36.5. I'll get back to you on that. I'm not sure either of these teams are going to score anything in this game. And I have a hard time seeing Houston get to 10 points in this one unless they get a defensive score out of it. So yeah, lean Utah, lean the under. This is going to be a yucky game. And then Cincinnati is at Colorado. Low-key 5-2 teams there matching up. And that's a good late kickoff right there, man. Colorado favored by 4.5. I would definitely lean Colorado in this game. Hey, let's hope for points. Let's hope for the over at 57.5. Hey, if Colorado wins this, they get to 6-2. Probably get some back end of the top 25 consideration there if they get to that 6-2. They'd be 4-1 in the Big 12. Really, the winner of this game is 4-1 in the Big 12 and they're 6-2. Very, very much in the thick of things. Very much in the dark horse category. Hey, shout out to Colorado. They have very much improved this year. They have been better than I expected, quite frankly. Improved. Hey, Deion Sanders maybe doing a good job there. Let's maybe pump the brakes a little bit because we're going to see what Deion Sanders is after this year, because they're not going to have Shedeur Sanders and they are not going to have Travis Hunter anymore. But leave that to the side for right now. This is a big-time game that is a little bit under-talked about, I would say, between Cincinnati and Colorado. I'm not sure either of them are that great. They're either one. The winner of this game is going to be very much in the thick of things in the Big 12 going forward there, so something to monitor going forward. So that's it for the Big 12, I would say. Rutgers is at USC this week. USC favored by 14.5. Rutgers has been terrible. Still, just give them to me. I'm not going to bet it probably, but plus 14.5, you're going to give me that hook? Okay, yeah, give them to me. I mean, I know Rutgers is terrible, but USC cannot put teams away this year. I mean, they just lost to Maryland, who they were favored by double digits against last week. Or maybe it was 7.5. They were favored by 7.5, so give them a little bit more credit, but I don't know, man. I just feel pretty good about Rutgers in this game. Maybe not good enough to bet, but good enough to really have a good thought about in this game. I just keep getting notifications out the ass of my phone. Would you just be quiet over there? Iowa's favored by 13.5 at home versus Northwestern. Caleb Johnson already has over 1,000 yards, 13 touchdowns. He's an absolute stud. I mean, one of the best running backs that Iowa's had over the last several years there for him. He's been an absolute revelation, the real reason why they're scoring all these points this year. Granted, the defense hasn't been as good, so they're not as good of a football team. But Cade McNamara has 6 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Caleb Johnson has 13 touchdowns by himself. We know the straw that stirs that drink. That's all. That's a long-winded way to say that I guess I would lean Iowa in this one. I'm probably not going to bet them, but I guess I would lean Iowa. Maryland's on the road at Minnesota. Cover your eyes for that one. I guess lean Minnesota. That's a yucky game in its own right. Michigan State is at Michigan. Probably even yuckier. Michigan is a 5-point favorite, and I think Michigan State's very much in the thick of things for this one, but shields your eyes. Avert the eyes of small children. They shouldn't be watching a product like that going forward this week. What do we got going on in the SEC? Arkansas is playing at Mississippi State. Hey, this is a spot. If you're looking for a possible second win of the season for Mississippi State, we got Arkansas in Starkville. We have been the bane of their existence for many years in the past. Hey, I'm leaning Mississippi State this week. I'm not going to pick them. I'm not going to bet them. I'm not going to lay any sort of money on them whatsoever. But mark my words here, folks. I think Mississippi State could win this one. And I think there's a real chance that they do win this one. This would be a good spot for them to, get a win that maybe they weren't expected to get as the season went on. Arkansas is a 7-point favorite. Live dog, Mississippi State. I think they're going to force some turnovers, and honestly, I do think Mississippi State is going to win this game. Completely biased pick. I fully recognize that, but Michael Van Buren has been playing better every single week. The defense is starting to get some turnovers. I just like Mississippi State in this spot. And Arkansas is a team that's still okay, not great. They just got blown out of the water by LSU. They snatched defeat from the jaws of victory against Oklahoma State earlier in this year. I just think this is a good spot for Mississippi State to get that second win of the year. Hey, sue me. Don't actually. Although I've got good legal representation if you do. Just putting it out there. Auburn and Kentucky. Just, again, this is another one. You should just shield this game from small children. No reason they should be watching bad football like this. Who knows? I guess I would lean Kentucky at 2.5 because Auburn is just hapless. And that's just where we're at on that matchup. With that said, though, I think that pretty much wraps it up for the preview of next week. Hey, yeah, that was week 8 in college football. And hey, that's all, folks. Thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. I'm going to have a full slate of bets for you on Thursday. I'm sure I'll have anywhere from 7 to 10, I would imagine. I haven't really picked them out. I've only really picked out the Boise State UNLV over 65.5, and I'll go shop that number around, get back to you what I ultimately end up betting. But hey, that one's out there right now. That's our first pick of the week. Outside of that, I'm going to get you more on Thursday. And with that, thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. We do this thing twice a week during football seasons. Obviously, we got college football on Tuesdays, NFL on Thursdays. And hey, if you enjoy it, subscribe, leave a rating, leave a like, whatever you want to do. Share it with a friend. Help me grow this thing a little bit. That's the main thing. And follow me on the socials at CalebVUA, just basically on Twitter. Just follow me on Twitter. X, whatever the hell you want to call it, at CalebVUA. That link is down in the description. If you want to contact the show, either shoot me a DM on the Twitters or go over to the email unqualifiedanalysis@gmail.com and shoot me an email over there. Either way, I'll try to respond, do whatever, make whatever addition to the show that you may want if it's a good suggestion. If not, I'll probably just politely decline. But either way, if you want to contact me, that's the way to do it. And with that, thank you so much for tuning into Unqualified Analysis. As always, I have got no clue what I'm talking about. I do have to make sure that nothing that came through was particularly pressing. No. Okay. Don't worry about it. I'm just switching over to the fun fact of the week. Okay, here we go. So, one thing I did learn this week, though. Probably the most awkward outro that I've done so far, but one thing I learned this week, Josh Jacobs, we're going to get to the NFL episode on Thursday, but a little preview. Josh Jacobs caught his first career receiving touchdown against the Texans, I believe in his 5th season as a pro, 5th, 6th maybe, season as a pro. Jacobs has the record for most receptions to start a career without a touchdown. He had 211 receptions before he got his first receiving touchdown on his 212th. That's insane. That's just something, when I heard it, I couldn't believe it. And that's wild. That's wild. And I'm sure that's going to be a record that stands for quite some time. A dubious record, but hey, you got on the board. You got on the board at the very least. Going to cut this thing off now to keep it at a reasonable length. I will see y'all on Thursday with the NFL episode recapping the full week that was in the NFL. Until then, enjoy these 2 days, folks, because I'm coming at your fat ass on Thursday. With that, deuces. I need to get the hell out of here. See you later.